think you have the wrong car.
When Casey opened her eyes again, they were already trapped in a completely sealed basement. There were no windows, only cold walls and dim lighting. The girls clung to each other in fear, completely unsure what to do. Then the door opened. The man who had abducted them walked in, expressionless. He took out a handkerchief and carefully wiped down a chair. Only after making sure there wasn't a single speck of dust did he slowly sit down. Within this man, different personalities took turns controlling his body. The act of wiping the chair revealed a severe obsession with cleanliness. The personality in front of them was named Dennis. He was one of the most dominant and darkest figures inside this body. He examined the three girls as if he were selecting items. His gaze eventually settled on Marcia, who was wearing black stockings. Casey quietly told Marcia to urinate on herself. Hearing Marcia scream, Casey thought she was in serious danger. But at that moment, Dennis showed clear disgust and threw her back into the basement. Perhaps Marcia had followed Casey's advice and soiled herself. For someone with extreme cleanliness issues like Dennis, this was unbearable. Not long after, Dennis returned. This time, he didn't continue the previous behavior. Instead, he brought cleaning supplies and forced the girls to clean the floor they had dirted. He told them they were sacred offerings. They had to remain clean, as they would eventually be used to fulfill certain desires. Just as the girls were trying to understand what he meant, the sharp sound of high heels echoed from outside the door. They rushed to the crack in the door and shouted desperately for help.
We're here! Help us! We're in here!
Don't go in there.
But the moment the door was pushed open, everything froze. Standing there was still Dennis. The difference was that he was now dressed in women's clothing, carrying a soft, feminine presence. The girls were completely stunned. What kind of disturbing role-playing was this? This was actually another personality known as Patricia. After calmly reassuring the girls with a few words, she gracefully closed the door, but instead of easing their fear, it created an even deeper sense of discomfort. That unsettling feeling was even stronger than facing the aggressive Dennis. That night, Dennis changed his appearance again. He introduced himself as Brody, a 9-year-old boy. Clearly, this was yet another personality.
Someone's coming for you.
Casey realized that Brody didn't seem to be pretending. This felt like a rare opportunity. She told Brody that Dennis was planning to sacrifice him. Hearing this, Brody immediately burst into tears. Casey took the chance to beg him to let them go and take them out of there. Just as Casey thought she was about to succeed, Brody suddenly became alert.
No, wait, please don't talk.
Seeing that he wasn't falling for it, the girls had no choice but to find another way to escape. They began knocking around the room, searching for weak points in the structure. Claire stood on the bed and tapped the ceiling. Hearing a hollow sound, she quickly took off her high heels and began smashing the ceiling. As debris kept falling, a hole was finally broken open, but there was still a metal barrier blocking the opening. It had to be removed before anyone could crawl through. The noise alerted Brody outside. Casey and Marcia rushed to hold the door shut.
Hey, what are you guys doing? Hey!
Just as Claire was about to climb in, the door was suddenly forced open with overwhelming strength. Dennis had taken control again. At the last second, Claire managed to climb into the ventilation shaft. She followed the duct and reached the outside, but before she could catch her breath, she heard heavy footsteps approaching behind her. Panicked, Claire hid in a nearby storage locker. Through a crack in the door, she saw Dennis rushing past, shouting in anger. It seemed he hadn't noticed her hiding there, but just as she thought she was safe, Dennis still found her.
Could you step outside, please? Please.
Claire stepped out of the locker, trembling, but Dennis didn't harm her. Instead, he looked at her with clear disgust. He ordered her to remove her dirty clothes. Then he locked her alone in a separate room. He even used a drill to completely seal the door. After that, he returned to the basement and repaired the hole in the ceiling. He warned them not to try escaping again. The next day, Patricia brought Casey and Marcia to the kitchen outside. She picked up a slice of bread and spread a thick layer of raw lard on it. The sight immediately made Casey feel sick, seeing this moment where he seemed unguarded. Marcia exchanged a glance with Casey. Even though Casey signaled her not to act impulsively, Marcia could no longer hold herself back. Patricia ordered Casey to return to the room. With no choice, Casey obeyed, but Marcia didn't get far before she was stopped by a locked door. By then, Patricia was already behind her. She didn't act immediately. Instead, she shook her head in deep disappointment. Then she said something confusing, yet revealing the core idea of the story. She resented those who lived smooth lives without experiencing hardship. It was a twisted mindset, where someone shaped by suffering becomes the one who harms others. Just like that, Marcia was also locked away alone. Now, Casey was the only one left in the basement. She understood that in the face of absolute power, there was no way to win. Since force wouldn't work, she had to rely on strategy. She waited. She waited for the 9-year-old Brody to appear again. That night, Brody appeared again, but to Casey's surprise, this childlike Brody immediately tried to kiss her. Brody was clearly excited. He began rambling on, proudly showing off what he owned. He said he had his own room, with a CD player where he could listen to music. Most importantly, there was a window in his room. The moment Casey heard the word window, her eyes lit up. She quickly asked Brody to take her there to listen to music, but the moment she made the request, Brody's expression suddenly turned cold and disgusted. Dennis was back. Just when Casey thought all hope was gone, the door opened again. It was Brody, returning once more. He decided to secretly take Casey to see his room. The moment they entered, Brody eagerly started dancing for Casey. The performance made Casey deeply uncomfortable. She asked Brody where the window was. To her shock, Brody pointed at a painting on the wall.
Oh, that's here.
Now it's open. Now it's open.
Looking at him, Casey felt a wave of despair. She begged Brody to let her go. Brody didn't dare disobey Dennis, but after repeated pleas, he finally began to waver. He then pulled out a walkie-talkie from the corner. Casey grabbed it and realized it actually worked. Brody tried to stop her from calling for help. He was afraid Dennis would find out.
Held in a basement, I've been abducted with 2 other girls. Please.
At that moment, Casey noticed Brody's presence suddenly change. She realized this was no longer the innocent Brody. Dennis had returned. Dennis coldly took the walkie-talkie from Casey's hands. Then he dragged her back to the basement. At that moment, Casey spotted a nail on the ground. While Dennis wasn't paying attention, she quickly picked it up and hid it in her hand. As Casey struggled to survive in the basement, Kevin's psychiatrist, Karen, received a series of distress emails. The sender was Kevin, the original personality inside the body. To cover up what he was about to do, Dennis pretended to be Kevin and went to the clinic, but Karen knew him too well and saw through the disguise immediately. From the moment he walked in, he couldn't stop wiping his hands. That was Dennis's signature obsession with cleanliness. Realizing he couldn't fool her, Dennis stopped pretending. He admitted that he and another personality had taken control, but what truly unsettled him was his belief that the 24th personality, the Beast, was about to emerge. Realizing things were spiraling out of control, Karen rushed to his home that night. She tried to awaken Kevin's original consciousness, but to her shock, the beast Dennis spoke of was not imaginary. It was real, and it was the most terrifying personality of all. It even preyed on those it deemed impure. Hearing this, Karen felt a chill run through her. She realized Dennis was on the edge of losing control, and staying any longer was dangerous. She made an excuse to go to the bathroom, hoping to leave, but once outside, she noticed many rooms lining the hallway. Curious, she opened one of them.
Help me.
Before she could react, Dennis appeared behind her. He used a chemical agent to knock her unconscious. Tonight was the birth of the 24th personality. He would not allow anyone to interfere. Meanwhile, Casey used the nail she found to pry open the door lock. she successfully made her way into the hallway. At the same time, Karen, who had been unconscious, slowly regained awareness. She wrote down Kevin's weakness on a piece of paper, but just as she finished, something flashed behind her. She quickly grabbed a knife from the table for protection. When she turned around, the beast was already standing behind her. He wrapped his arms tightly around her. Meanwhile, Casey finally found Marcia, but her abdomen had already been torn open. There was no time to grieve. Casey had to find Claire, but the moment she opened the door, she saw something dragging Claire into the corner. When she got closer, she saw Kevin feeding on Claire. Terrified, Casey turned and ran. At that moment, she found the note Karen had left behind. It said to call out his full name. Just then, Kevin caught up to her. He moved across the walls like a spider, climbing effortlessly. Casey was horrified. She tried shouting the name written on the note.
Kevin Wendelbrock!
When Kevin was a child, he suffered abuse from his mother. Every time she was about to punish him, she would shout his full name. That became a lasting trauma in his mind. When Casey shouted it, Kevin's original personality resurfaced. Seeing everything around him and Karen lying on the ground, Kevin realized he had lost control. To stop everything, he told Casey there was a shotgun in the house. He asked her to use it to end his life, because he could no longer control the others. But before he could finish speaking, the other personalities forced him back down. They fought for control inside him. In the end, Kevin completely lost control of his body. Terrified, Casey grabbed the gun and ran. At the same time, Kevin transformed into the beast. In an instant, he caught up to her. Panicking, Casey loaded the gun, but just as she raised it, Kevin suddenly disappeared. She got up and kept running, dragging her injured leg. The place felt like a maze. Soon, she hit a dead end. She hid inside an iron cage. As Kevin approached, she fired at him repeatedly. But the bullets only caused minor scratches. Even more shocking, he bent the metal bars open with his bare hands. Just when Casey thought it was over, Kevin noticed the scars covering her body. He said she was different. He said her soul was pure. Casey had lost her parents at a young age. The uncle who took her and treated her terribly. She grew up under constant harm. Those experiences twisted her mind, but also made her stronger. The beast saw her as someone who had endured pain, just like him, so he chose to spare her. Not long after, the police finally found Casey and rescued her. As for Kevin, he escaped. The most chilling part of this story was never the beast's strength. It was the truth that made the beast stop. When the scars on Casey's body appeared under the dim light, something unspoken formed between them, not kindness, but recognition, a shared fracture deep within their souls. This film uses an extreme story to tell us something unsettling. What doesn't break you doesn't just make you stronger, it also makes you something entirely unique. Because true purity is not untouched perfection, it is surviving the wounds, and still choosing to believe in the light.